Well, your comment, maybe we could stamp so we could just make it. And thank you very much. Okay, so just by way of some opening comments, the opposition is of the view that this budget is fake and fraudulent. This government clearly is still in a campaign mood, and we're given the impression that over the last couple of months that they have been in office, that they have performed exceptionally well, not given credit at all to the policies, programs of the People's National Movement, which clearly they continued in many cases. If I could give a simple example, in talking about vehicles for the fire services and the breathing apparatus, those allocations were all made during the term of office of the People's National Movement. I also want to talk about the issue of property tax, which they have skillfully avoided by bringing a new tax for landlords. Every Trinidadian and Tobagoan has been waiting patiently to hear what this government has done with the property tax that they collected. A campaign promise, no property tax. The Minister of Finance spoke about a rebate. They have collected more than $130 million in property tax. What are they going to do with that property tax? The other issue is the issue of the public servants and the payment of the 10%. I raised the issue before, where is the allocation for that 10%? And for the period 2014 to 2016 and 2017 to 2019. It is very clear that they are misleading the public by giving the impression that they are giving this 10% over a 3-year period, and it is really a 6-year period. So when you go through the entire budget, you would see where they are misleading the public. Pay close attention to the fact that the price, the oil price, is $73.25. I mean, anyone can do the search, and you would see right now, depending on whether it is Brent, that the price could be under $60 or slightly over $63. So I will stop there for now, and you all can ask questions, and then we will answer accordingly. But the most important thing is the issue of continuing to campaign and really misleading the public. The other one, of course, will be the issue of the utility sector, which is very interesting. Two very interesting things is that they are taking all this credit for water projects in Siparia and Arima and a number of other places without saying to you that under the People's National Movement, monies were approved through the IDB loan for all those projects that they are making reference to. It's impossible from May to October that this government would have obtained funding to be able to do those projects. And I hope you take note of the fact that this is one of the, well, this is in truth and in fact within recent times, the latest budget ever. And very little discussion as it relates to issue of funding, specifically referring to monies as we have been accustomed to. Very, very different in terms of the way they have addressed a number of items. But the truth is that this attempt is strictly to mama-guy the public. Yes.
Is it that you suspect that there will be no deposits into the HSF?
Well, what I suspect is that they have designed it in such a way that where they will be coming to use money from the HSF, withdraw money from the HSF.
And given that you did mention it is a late budget, have you all been given any notice as to sittings over the weekend and so on?
No, we have been given absolutely no notice, but we expect that it's quite possible because you would recall that we have had previous Saturday sittings. I mean, I remember being here until 5 o'clock one Saturday morning, so I would not be surprised. But we at least we hope that the government will give us due notice as it relates to that.
What do you think will happen as it relates to tax collection, given that, we're seeing, for instance, the price of super gas per liter has gone down, VAT off 7,000 food items and so on? What do you think, how do you think this will affect government's revenue as it relates to taxes?
Well, again, that's where it's very misleading. The VAT off the 7,000 food items, which already existed. But Mr. Imbut wants to add.
I just wanted to speak about the HSF point. Come closer. Right. The rules of the HSF require the Minister of Finance to make an estimate of revenues from petroleum. So that's revenues from oil and revenues from gas at the budget time. So he made an estimate of a oil price. When you go into the estimates, you'll see the actual revenue he's estimating. So he has said he's pegging his budget on an oil price of $73.25. But if you look at all of the forecasters today, there are a number of entities that forecast oil price. You have the U.S. Energy Information Administration, World Bank, IMF, Standard & Poor's. They all estimate oil prices and give forecasts. If you go to the U.S. EIA today, right now, and look at the forecast for 2026, it's $52. And all of the other companies and entities that estimate oil prices are somewhere between 50 and 60. Our oil is priced at a lower price than some of these indicators because of our oil being heavy oil on land and so on. So we don't even get what you're seeing there for Brent and so on. So having pegged the budget on a $73 oil price, when he knows that the price should really be $53, what he's doing is overestimating revenue deliberately so that he can withdraw from the HSF. Because if your estimate is more than it should be and you get less than you expected, you can take out 60% of the difference. Okay? What he's also doing by overestimating the price of oil grossly by about 50%. He's also underestimating the deficit because there's no way he's going to achieve that revenue. The revenue for this year was supposed to be 54 billion. They collected 50. They say they will collect about 56 billion next year. Highly unlikely, especially with oil prices as they are and as they are forecasted to be. Okay.
I think you should take note that what they are actually focusing on is to say that their projection in terms of the price of oil is about $4 less than what we had projected last year. I think that's what they are focusing on as distinct from providing the accurate information as it relates to the data on oil and gas. You want to add anything?
Interestingly, every single project that they referred to in the energy sector is easily, you could see, a continuation of the work that we had done. There's absolutely nothing new, including in the renewables. But as both the member for Diego Martin Northeast, as well as the opposition leader, have said, what is critical in this area is the overestimation of the oil price. There is nowhere in the world and no expert in the world would put the oil price at above $70 a barrel for next year. As well, we have a reduced amount of production. We also have a reduced amount of production on our gas as well. What we can say is, thank God that we had renegotiated better prices for our gas. So you're still getting a basket price of gas. JKM today is $11, NBP is $11, and that is going to help with the gas price. But they have grossly overvalued the revenue. And even if they do so and they're able to dip into the HSF, which is what we believe they're going to do, that is the formula you're still going to have significant shortfalls of revenue and cash flow. And it is going to affect what is taking place. Some of the other discussions we had were all of the goodies they seem to suggest, the dollar, etc., are quickly taken away from us by the other new taxes that they've put on. Take, for example, saying you're increasing your electricity rates, but it is only for commercial and industrial. Those are immediately going to trickle down to our pockets. The same thing is going to happen with the rent, with the landlords. We were discussing it. You think the landlord is going to absorb this rent and keep our rents where they are? It is all going to come down to our pockets. So don't be fooled. And the words that the opposition leader used,
Yes, fake and fraudulent.
fake and fraudulent, you're going to feel it. So do not be fooled.
And to come back, to come back on a point that you made, Urvashi, and I'm grateful that you did, because you're raising the whole question of whether this is realistic or not. There are two things in the budget that are going to cost the government money. One is the reduction in the price of super gas. They will be giving up about $600 million in income, and then they're giving Tobago about an additional $400 million. So you add those two, that's $1 billion. But if you look at the expenditure envelope, it's the same $59 billion that they are projecting for 2026 that was realized in 2025. But they're losing a billion, so it has to come from somewhere. Now, we will examine the estimates, of course, but obviously that billion is coming from ministries like health, national security, and so on. They can't manufacture it out of thin air because they are saying that they're going to spend 59, which is what they spent in 2025. So there are many unrealistic things in this budget, many, many unrealistic things. And to add to what Mr. Young just said, we had reduced property tax to 2%. Sorry. We had reduced property tax to 2%. They're taxing 3 or 3.5%. It's as simple as that, you don't have to be, a rocket scientist. They are now taxing properties at a rate of 3.5%. That's what it is. Because the landlord, of course, will pass that on to the tenant. Okay.
The other important issue is the linking of CPEP, URP, reforestation to the issue of criminal gangs. One of the important things for us is what was the alternative, exactly what they were going to do with these almost 30+ thousand CPEP workers, URP workers, and others that have been terminated. Well, we know now that they are classified and put everybody in a category of criminal gangs, and they're talking about full-time employment. There's no allocation in the budget for that, but we await, of course, when the debate takes place for us to give them, for them to give us more particulars than what the minister has provided, which clearly does not help us, save and except to take one brush and put everyone in that category. We maintain the importance of the vulnerable communities. We maintain that this is a decision that they took, having told everybody when UNC wins, everybody wins. Now the CPEP workers, the URP workers, the reforestation workers, and many others who they have sent home will now realize that that was absolutely false.
Two more things I need to come in, no?
Somebody want to say? Yeah, sure.
Mentioned just now the price of
Gregory McBurney, Trinidad News. They mentioned just now the price of super gas, of course, being reduced. How do you reconcile? I mean, the average man, as far as they are concerned, this is a win for them. What do you tell the average man who that's all he's seeing it as?
Well, the thing about it is a plus. But I think Mr. Imber just made the point that there is going to be some revenue foregone. So that, yes, you're taking with one hand and, or as you say, you're giving with one hand and then you're taking it away on the other side in terms of the multiplicity of taxes that they have applied.
The saying, give Jack his jacket. Is there anything at all in the budget that you see as a good thing? Any positive?
Well, save and accept the issue, in the public domain, if you have to pay less for gas, the public will always see that as a plus. But then it is a way of saying to everyone, okay, yes, you're going to pay, you're going to save $50, but on the other hand, you have to go through all the multiplicity of taxes that exist. And very soon, if you look at the NIS as an example, right, that is another matter that they just quietly, so there are a number of things that have slipped in, and I'm sure as the debate goes on, you would be able to get all the particulars as it relates to that. Where's Vishnu? Vishnu?
Thank you. Just one quick point. I've classified the budget today as the good, the bad, and the hideous. And let's start with one good. And I'm not being self-serving, but the no taxes on pension for pensioners is good. Private pension. I didn't mention anything about public service. I'll move on to the bad and the entire system of the interfering with the NIS. It's a little, you have to be very careful about that. And the absolutely hideous would be the numbers presented. That those numbers simply, I've been in this business a very long time. And those numbers presented, those assumptions used, just I can't see them at the end of this fiscal year achieving those numbers. Absolutely not. They're just simply not adding up to me.
Good afternoon, everyone. Doris Polo, Guardian Media. I want to get the opposition's take on the allocation for Tobago. It seemed to be much higher than previous years.
Did he leave or he's here? Oh, right, I have.
So, good evening, everyone. So, we did the assessment, and of course, in Tobago, we'll welcome every additional cent. But at the same time, when you do the reflection and appreciate that the PNM would have passed a bill in the Parliament by simple majority, the Tobago Island Government Bill, that guaranteed Tobago at the time 6.8%. And that 6.8% really transformed to an additional $1 billion compared to what we got with the 5%. So what you're really seeing is that in a real sense, Tobago would have been sold short by $1 billion. And that, for me, as a Tobagonian, is the true essence of the loss for the people of Tobago. So while we gained an additional amount compared to last year, overall, when you put that into the context of what was approved by the PNM through the Island Government Bill, Tobago has in fact lost over $1 billion in additional allocation.
Mr. Morris, while you're here, there was an announcement by the finance minister that there would be representation on state boards from Tobago. How do you feel about that?
Well, that is something that has existed. And as a matter of fact, I've done the analysis, and most of the boards at this time, there's an absence of Tobagonians, while in previous years, it was a tradition that Tobagonians would always be represented. And one of the things that really concerned me as well is the absence of the conversation about Tobago's autonomy. That was non-existent in the budget. That is something that the PNM would have leveraged by way of actually bringing bills to the Parliament. Nothing was said, and I would love to hear the Chief Secretary's position on the fact that Tobago's autonomy and the issue of Tobago autonomy, which he said was the central, most important issue to the people of Tobago, that was non-existent in the budget. So Tobago didn't really win.
The other question, perhaps the opposition leader, maybe they want to respond to this
But
one.
before, I also want to just add the fact that it has been traditional. I think every single minister and person who has served here as a minister, that in addition to the allocation that Tobago receives in the budget, every single ministry traditionally as well would have some sort of allocation for Tobago. And very often when you add that figure, it can cross sometimes a couple hundred of millions of dollars. Yeah, as former Minister Imbert, Minister of Finance, said, it can cross as much as $700 million, whether it's in the energy sector, utility sector, the housing sector. Every single one of the ministries would make sure that there's also an additional allocation.
We've been reporting about road fatalities as of late, an increase in fact, and some as a result of being alcohol induced. Now we see the government is saying they're going to increase taxes on alcohol, cigarettes, and things of that nature. What is the opposition's thoughts on that?
Well, it's not just on the taxes on the alcohol and the cigarettes, but it's also the taxes on, well, not taxes, the increased fines on a multiplicity of offenses. Now, that is a sort of a way of dealing with the demerits points, which it is that they are not really happy with. We have seen some really ridiculous accidents on the road, and we still maintain that the demerit point is a valid intervention. We all agree that from time to time, when you pass legislation, you need to review legislation, there's needed for change. But if it is that their intervention is to increase taxes on rum and on cigarettes, and whether or not you have been convicted before, increase the fines, that is not it. We know we have the issues in terms of the court system, but the demerit points mean that you're actually tracking. People are a lot more conscious, and the data definitely showed us that with the demerit system, you actually saw a decrease in terms of road fatalities. Once they took the position that that no longer exists, we have seen a total reversal. Yes, MP Scotland?
Just on the $1.8 billion that the government thought, well, things that they will earn in the increase in fines, it defies all legal logic, because a fine is to act as a deterrent, an increase in fines. What they have done is to say, no, I will increase the fine, so you will do more of that egregious act, and I will make $1.8 billion on that. That is why we say this government is really fake and fraud, you know. United National con job. How could you say, I'm increasing the fines, but I'll wage 1.8 billion on that, when the increase in the fines is really to deter people from doing what they said they would do? But everybody wins. 1.8 billion, that's what he said. So that's my only point I want to make on that.
Mr. Scotland, while you're there, because you had responsibility for the TTPS and crime, well, I know we'll have the Homeland Security Minister and Minister of Defense speaking on it later on. Yes. But overall, do you have any comments based on what was said and announced for crime fighting initiatives?
Nothing was said, but I understood why nothing was said. You know, the Minister of Homeland, he gave the country all that he can give. He came to this parliament, he blew into a bag, all his gray matter was into that bag. He has nothing more to offer us. So what else do you expect to hear on crime other than that? I wonder. He gave us his best.
Just one final thing, and I want to put out a warning to the nation that if you check the central bank data, and I think the Guardian reported it today, that we are at 5.4 months of import cover. This hasn't been, import cover hasn't recorded, this been this low for decades. If you follow from April of this year to August of this year, the data I have, there's a precipitous decline in international reserves. When your balance of payment is in disequilibrium, right, nothing works. Your monetary policy doesn't work, your fiscal policy just collapses. Once your balance of payment, and I mentioned something about the IMF, and the Minister of Finance said I was unpatriotic. But that decline was 600 million US from April to August, and nothing in the budget about that decline. And I repeat, once your balance of payments, once those accounts are in disequilibrium, you're in big trouble. And I think the nation needs to be warned.
Let me just say that, this government spent almost 3 hours stomping the desk when, everybody wins. I want to ask them, because they haven't addressed it. If you all have been doing so well, why it is people have been being paid late or not being paid at all for the last couple of months? I just want them to respond to that, because it clearly means that the credit they're giving themselves for this great performance and management of the economy, they simply can't do the job. You wanted to ask a question?
Good evening, Kim Odram, Express. I think I would ask for an overview. I know that when the debate starts, there'll be more coming out, but maybe an overview on how you all feel about development that generates jobs, income, domestic income, whether it's in construction, whether it's introducing something new, how you feel about community development going forward, things that encourage, I mean, I know that the finance minister would have spoken about young people and so on. But I mean, overall, your views on how you see the government stimulating from the ground up, from the community level.
Well, I mean, that's the exact opposite. Opposite. Sean, you could come one time so you'll speak after me. But I mean, it's the exact opposite. The truth is, what are the traditional sectors when you talk about growth? The housing sector. I mean, there was very, very little about the housing sector. Construction sector. They talked about building a couple community centers. And even though they spoke about the utility sector and these projects, that the money for those projects came from under the People's National Movement. They talked about a number of roads and so that were completed under the People's National Movement. And they talked about a couple other projects that they intend to do. Those projects would have already been mentioned under the People's National Movement. So if you look about the issue of revenue generation, if you looked about the issue of diversification, if you looked on the issue of development, there is none in this budget.
Thank you, Opposition Leader. The truth is, there is no stimulation. There is nothing in the budget that one can point to that is going to stimulate the economy. Throwing out a few small projects, especially under utility companies, is of no moment, because we have to change streetlights. We have to do those things. That's not stimuli of growth. And those are the companies themselves doing it. As said, Mr. Imbert said, they said nothing about housing. But again, what we come back to, look at the LPG increase, saying over £100 of LPG, that is where they're going to increase it. Those are the restaurants that cook the food, that we fast food, that we all go to get, and these types of things. It is going to come down to our pockets. The same thing, you come back to the rent, so it is the exact opposite. There is nothing there. And the few programs that they spoke about, those all sounded very familiar, maybe with different names, but you've seen a reduction. We had a whole Ministry of Youth Development and National Service that was well on its pathway. I invite you all, go down to Tucker Valley in Chaguaramas and see what has happened to the Shade House project there, that they were young people learning farming, operating there. All of those things shut down. I saw they were mentioning about some of the youth camps. All of those were ongoing projects. So there is nothing new. What you're actually seeing, if you do a side-by-side comparison, is a reduction. So don't be fooled by just the title of the chapter. When you read through it and you compare, it is a very, very frightening future ahead of us.
Hi, good evening, everyone. What was extremely striking about this budget presentation is the startling lack of numbers, lack of substance in the entire thing. For instance, the minister mentioned local government, and we know in the past few months, local government has not received any significant funding whatsoever. It's San Fernando and San Fernando East. We have had difficulty with flooding because simply local government agencies have not had the funding to do the work they usually do. There's 10-foot tall bush in parts of the constituency because of a lack of funding. The local government, rural development, local government ministry is extremely important. Yet we heard almost nothing about it in this budget at all. The minister did not go into any detail about revenue generation. All he did was speak about various new taxes that they were going to implement. The tax on landlords is simply property tax by another name. The same tax that they've been criticizing for the past 20 years is exactly the same tax that they brought into being on this occasion. So at a higher rate than was proposed previously. So it is extremely deceptive. They cancel the TTRA. They cancel all of these revenue projects. Now all of a sudden they're trying to claim the Dragon Deal as their own. They have spent the past 20 years in this country attempting to undermine every single revenue generating project formed by the People's National Movement, from the aluminum smelter, Sandals and Tobago, TTRA, Indian businessmen coming here to invest. They call them all kinds of names. They ran them out of this country, and now they're revisiting some of those very same projects. I would not be surprised to hear the Prime Minister start talking about an aluminum smelter, or revisiting the TTRA, because what they are offering right now by expanding BR and so on. It has not worked. There's a revenue authority in Guyana, there's a revenue authority in Barbados, in Jamaica, because it is simply superior to the existing BIR structure. It is a modern tax revenue system. That is what Trinidad and Tobago requires. Thank you.
I paid very close attention listening to hear what were the plans for education coming out as we took in an almost 3 or a little over 3-hour budget presentation. And I was quite disappointed that such an important and integral issue was not dealt with in terms of our social context and what we are doing for education in this country. Take note, very careful note, that I heard 18,000 laptops promised and delivered. I mean, obviously they have not been delivered. It was before September, then it was the end of September, and now it is just, they have been delivered. And everyone knows that they have not been. Again, fake and fraudulent. Desk thumping does not equate to implementation, nor deep thought about what we are doing with our children. And again, if we are saying that we have CPEP, URP, forestry are now gone, then what of the more than 40,000 estimated children that have been affected by this? And putting the police in schools, as we have seen, has not cured the issue. There's a problem that we need to address. And if a Minister of Finance can spend over 3 hours speaking and not mention in any quantifiable terms what is happening with education and the plans for education, it tells you very clearly that that is not high on the agenda. No matter if you want to bandy about 8-something million for education, it means that when you look deeply again, it's the mama guy at the start. But where is the deep thought that has gone into it? I am looking forward to hearing, I'm going to look at the budget documents and also hearing from the Minister of Education, what are the plans to deal with our root problem of society in Trinidad and Tobago? Because when you speak about crime, when you speak about healthcare as well, all of these things have their root in our education system. And I was very, very disappointed that such an important issue was really given no type of care or plans, no substance at all by the Minister of Finance in over 3 hours of a budget presentation.
Okay, any more questions? Ms. Amber, if you could just want to wrap up.
Sure. You asked about our overall overview. Now, I took some notes on the things that I thought struck me. And they've increased taxes on banks. That must, now I found it ironic. A lot of the things the minister was saying were contrary to the policy that he enunciated at the beginning. So he said, people are complaining about high bank charges and bank fees. And we will deal with that by taxing the banks. That don't make any sense. Bank is a business, they go pass on that, the fees will go up. So that measure does not achieve the intention. Similarly, electricity. If you surcharge commercial and industrial enterprises, what are they going to do? They're going to pass on the additional electricity charge. So it means the cost of goods and services will go up. If you put a surcharge on landlords, they will increase rents. So I didn't quite understand where they were coming from. The two that struck me the most were the increase in customs charges. It's a 100% increase. The increase in excise duty on alcohol, it's a 100% increase. Now, of course, alcohol, excessive drinking leads to accidents on the road and so on, but not everybody who drinks is a driver. Come on, all right? So that what I found interesting about this budget, it is not people-centered to excessively increase the tax on alcohol by 100%. It's not a 10% increase, and a 100% increase on customs fees. And when I look at what they think they're going to get from that, is $1 billion, okay? The national insurance, it makes absolutely no sense. They put in the budget statement, this is a win for workers and this is a win for pensioners. That's nonsense. Come on. They're increasing the actual contribution rate by 45%. Don't let the minister fool you, The current contribution rate is 13%. So when you add 3% and then another 3, that's an additional 6, which is a 45% increase in contributions. So if you're paying $100 in NIS now per month, you'll end up paying $145 when they finish with you. And then the whole question of reducing the pension as you get older. They're now at age 60, you get $3,000. They are actually doing what they fought against. We had a whole program of consultation with the private sector and so on, and the unions with respect to looking at a phased introduction in the retirement age. And they campaigned against the PSA in particular. Now they're doing the same thing. How is that a win for workers? Yeah, I'll come to that. How is that a win for workers? That 3 years from now, you're now getting a reduced pension, you're no longer getting a $3,000 pension if you retire at the age of 60? Come on, how is that a win? How is it a win for workers that you have to pay 45% more in NIB contributors? Nonsense. And then the 10% is the biggest mama guy of all. Because I went and I looked at the statements made by the president of the PSA, the new one, not the previous one. And it was clear that the promise that the UNC gave to them and the promise that the PSA leadership gave to its membership was that 10% was for the first 3 years, 2014 to 2016. It's in black and white, in speeches, in documents, and so on. We offered 4% for the first 3 and 5% for the second 3, 9%. So all they've done is taken 9% and sent it to 10%. They've done nothing. They've just mama-guyed all the workers. That is a fraud. That is deception of the highest.
Okay, folks, so thank you very much. Well, I know it's time, so we'll
Yeah,
take
I
the
just
last
one more question, right?
Sure.
I wanted to raise the point of the allocation for housing, 0.662 billion, but then I noticed that notably absent was MP Camille Robinson-Regis. Could we get some indication of why she isn't here, if she's okay?
Okay, she's okay, but she had surgery and she's recovering. So she has asked for an extension. I chatted with her up to last week, and yes, she's so she's much better.
She'll be back out soon.
Yes. Thank you very much.